You are going to love this episode of Moves Leaders Make, a book love podcast series for educators shaping change. We're grateful to donors like you who have generously contributed to the Book Love Foundation and made this series possible. Visit booklovefoundation.org to learn more. Just want to mention I'm wearing my granddaughter's jewelry, the best jewelry anyone can have. Kind of a nod to the elementary principal we're going to talk to today, Katy Inman from Center for Teaching and Learning in Boothbay Harbor. Welcome, Katy.
Nice to meet you, Katy.
Thank you so much for having me on. Nice to see you.
It's always good to see you. And look at that quilt behind you. Kindness, creativity. What is that about?
My first year here, every year the teachers identify 4 values for the year that they think will guide the faculty's work best. And then they make a gift of one of the smaller squares that you see for another teacher that talks about that person's strengths on the team. And that's like the way we start our faculty meetings for the year. So that's the one from 1920. But the other ones are around the room.
Oh, 2019, 2020.
Yes, that's
1920. I was like, wow.
I know.
Oh, no, that's so long. No. Yeah, from 2019, 2020. But I have some of the other quilts are around the rest of the room.
I just love that as
That's
a
great.
thought for how to start a school year, connecting teachers to values that you're going to connect to the school.
Yeah, that's quite impressive.
That is very cool. So I was just there last week, and one of my absolute favorite things about your school is morning meeting. Could you describe that for people?
Well, we have a small enough school that we can all gather every day to hear announcements from the students, announcements from teachers if there are any, and to read a poem and a song together, to read a poem and sing a song every morning. And it's a great way to start the day. We do birthdays. So I think that the point is that in the morning we have a ritual so that each student feels welcome and like it matters that they're here.
Yeah. Well, one of the 2 things about this morning ritual, because I visited when Nancie Atwell was running the school, and I think more than once, actually. Every time I've been there, I'm struck by these 2 things in morning meeting. Kids sit with the, smallest, youngest kids in the front row all the way to the back, but you will see sprinkled throughout the room, older kids holding younger kids in their laps. And you will see this ease to the beginning. So you walk in and there are people singing. There's usually somebody with a guitar or some other instruments. They've passed those out to kids and they're singing. And what that allows is kids are arriving what might be called late in a public school. They're arriving and just settling into morning meeting, and there's no notice taken of it, because parents have busy lives. And if the kid has arrived late, they're just welcomed into this room because the room is welcoming. And the teachers all rim the room over on one side. And this sense of it being a joyful, engaged, together opening to every school day is remarkable.
It's the thing that sold me on the school when I came to look at it. Once I was at morning meeting, I was texting my husband from the bathroom, I'm coming here, we're taking this job. I do think that it's a nice way to motivate kids to want to be getting to school as quickly as possible too. People do have busy lives and lateness happens. That's a part of elementary school. But in the morning, it is a gentle entrance, but it's also something kids like to be a part of. So sometimes they are helping their families just get out the door a little more quickly because they're like, I don't want to miss morning meeting. I want to share about my pet. I want to share about when I saw a deer in the backyard. I want to share about the hunting trip I'm going on with my dad this weekend.
You know what? There's patience there too, Katy. There's when you ask for student announcements, a kid might tell about their soccer game the night before to the room. And you think about how often we talk about speaking and listening and these important skills kids need to develop. Well, you have to, in order to do that spontaneously, you have to practice. And that practice can sometimes not be smooth. And everyone waits and everyone listens. It's truly remarkable. It is a value of your school.
Yeah, and it gives kids the strength to stand up and speak their opinion, their truth in a number of different situations in the school as well. So it's like they're practicing in a situation that has a lot of control on it with the teachers there on the edge, et cetera. But it's the same group that's out on the playground, and it happened it was just yesterday, like some 3rd through 6th graders were playing a game that was a little bit wild. And a kindergartner said, I don't think this fits our Bill of Rights. I don't feel like people's bodies are safe right now. And the older kids stopped. They stopped and they listened. And to think that like our youngest kids can feel empowered to say like, we have certain agreements as a school about how we're going to be, and I do feel like I can talk to you. It was a surprising moment. It was like everyone was there was a couple grownups on the playground who saw it happen, and everyone had to talk about it afterward because it was like, that was interesting.
Yeah. Well, you have the kids from pre-K through 8, right? A lot of
Yes.
the kids do come in at different grade levels, but there are always kids who've been there from the beginning that can carry those values.
Yeah. And it's an authentic experience, rather than teaching those skills in an isolated or through examples. The kids are experiencing, the authentic experience. That's fascinating. Really?
Yeah, we were using it internally as an example of the difference it's made because we recently added pre-K. And so this is our first year of kindergartners who've already been here for a year. And their pre-K focus is non-academic. It's strictly on our community agreements, which we call our Bill of Rights of what students can expect when they come to this school. So to hear just a child who's only 5 really be able to speak his mind about what that means it was very interesting. That pre-K impact is what we hoped is that it would have deepened kids' understanding of like our culture or the community. And that's what we saw evidence of yesterday.
What a way to celebrate, huh? Celebrate how the hard work you've been doing has paid off.
You created a structure. You write about that it's a structure of support, one of those pieces, but it's also a structure that has ongoing modeling for all kids. And again, it goes back to that nothing's artificial about it. It's all authentic. And it's very interesting. As I said to our viewers, I've not been to the school, so now I can't wait to come. Just so
You're
that
invited.
I can participate in the morning meeting.
I love how a kid will say their announcement is, I lost a tooth, right? And everyone's like, wow, right? There's just this beautiful everydayness to the experience of humans in and out of school that becomes elevated there because we're all part of this community. We know each other. And I have actually sat beside kids in the several visits I've made that have come in from public schools and been really amazed at the time they have to continue work, right? The pace is different in your school. Could you talk about that?
Well, we do try to limit transitions and keep the opportunity for long blocks of time where the teacher is making the choice about how to move from activity to activity. And we try to have extended periods where kids can do the work, not like practice for the work that they might do someday, but do work right now. So it's writing time. Kids are writing books or pieces that they have a real audience for, and they're going to share those with that audience. It's part of the choice and agency that's a component of kids feeling really motivated to do their best.
And it isn't grounded in grades. Can you talk about what is the evaluation process for kids?
Yeah, we have kids with the help of their teachers set goals in each academic area for themselves and then work to achieve those goals, collect evidence in a portfolio that shows how they've made progress on their goals, and then they do a 45-minute presentation starting in kindergarten for their teachers and their parents twice a year, using the portfolio as their base and sharing their goals and then showing that evidence. And the teachers write a narrative of their reflections on how the student grew and made progress, and then where we're going next. So that informs the next set of goals for the next trimester.
And you want your kids there, right? That's the immediate feel is I want my grandchildren to experience. One of the things that has always struck me as important about all of this is that we get caught up in a system of grades that we believe often in this culture matter in order to get to the next place. And as I've shared with you, my sister-in-law, as chairman of the board of an exclusive private school in Portland, Maine, talked about your school and the applicants from the school that always had a seat because they came in as such thoughtful, collaborative, problem-solving kids. They knew that's what a school can create is an identity that you hear the name and you go, oh, I know what those kids are doing at that school. And it is about choice and about agency.
Yeah, we've been very lucky. You know, the school was founded in 1990 by Nancie Atwell, and the reputation that we have is built on the backs of our graduates who've gone out into the world and really proven themselves to be the thoughtful, curious kids that we are. That's our intention with the way we've set the program up here. So I just really feel that, like, my personal feeling is that grades encourage kids to see life and learning in a laddered way where, like, they have to be above someone and everyone's like getting ranked. And I just think that's very inauthentic to how the world works for grownups, where there's a lot more focus on teamwork and collaboration in a work environment. And I just don't think that we should be, it's too easy for that grade to move on to the kid like they're an A, not they got an A. And I just think that when kids are assessed with real data about exactly what they did and like comments about the exact piece of writing or the exact project in science, it's more focused on like everybody has somewhere to grow and everybody did something cool. So if we talk about learning in that way, they just get the sense from the beginning that their goal is to do their best, that we're all on our own journey. And it's really not about like ranking people. People are not supposed to be compared to their friends and their peers. They're supposed to work with them so that everybody grows.
Which, of course, translates to kids who in class, as I'm sitting beside one kid working on a poem, another kid is saying, I really like that image. Have you thought about this? That natural collaboration and lifting each other up is more likely when I don't see you as competition.
Yeah.
What I appreciate is, and what I get concerned about as someone who has worked in public schools for more years than I would like to admit, is that it's that comparison, comparing kid to kid from a teacher perspective. And you see that just really to be really concerning when you see kids doing that as well. And I think that's part of our issue, just the perfection issue that we have, the concerns that in our culture about that whole model. And I think what I would like to see, and maybe you can help us with this, if for those of us who are listening, how could someone, a principal, model some of the things that you're talking about, even if they're not in a school with 80 kids and multi-grades connections? What advice could you give them? Because I think what you've just talked about is something that can be replicated in any educational environment with the leadership that we're looking for.
Yes, I would agree with that. And I think there's a lot that any type of school can do to help kids feel like they belong. And I think that that's like the center. We want kids to think that learning is for them and school is their place. And so that can mean everything from like advisory groups where kids and teachers have a little pod of people who do know them better, and where they have like resources to go back to when something doesn't go right, someone who can advocate for them, someone who knows that kid well. I think that the more that we lean on narrative and descriptive feedback about kids' work and lean a little less. I mean, some environments are going to have grades, like that's fine. But the more that teachers can be given time and resources so that they have the ability to comment on exactly why they're ranking a kid in a certain way, it's going to be more meaningful to the kid and more clear how the kid can make changes to grow more and be more successful.
You know, I was thinking of how kids who set their own goals are more likely to reach them. That's a basic tenet of a lot of assessment research. And how when I ask my kids to set goals every quarter as readers, how do you want to challenge yourself? Because that is such an individual question. I want to read the Martin Luther King autobiography, King, but it's this big. And I have to make the decision that that is going to be okay in an environment where the total number of books you read are celebrated, and just talking to students about how you challenge yourself is maybe a different genre. I am not one who ever reads horror. So maybe what I'm missing is that there's a whole fantasy kind of genre that I haven't explored a lot because I don't like the way they dip into violence. Maybe with some right recommendations, I could stretch myself in a different genre. So what happened in my classroom is every time I asked kids to do that, they would set higher goals than I would have set. I would be amazed. There's a 9th grade interview with a kid at the semester mark where I say, you know, what are you going to challenge yourself to do next semester or next quarter? And he says, well, I now want to read harder books like Romeo and Juliet. I want to read the classics, the ones that people talk about. And I'm like, this is a kid who didn't want to read at the start of the year, but now wants to know what this thing is. And I think we underestimate that no matter you're graded or not, kids setting goals is a different way to think about who's deciding what's next for me.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think setting the goals is one thing that you have to build in the time for, and then reflecting in a way that's like non-punitive, but encourages kids to be realistic about their strengths. And what comes next is just another piece that if administration can carve the time out for teachers and kids to do that, I think the research suggests that self-reflection is the other crucial piece with goal setting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because every reader should be allowed to abandon books. I see that in your school. It was definitely true in my classroom because you got started on it and changed your mind. But reflecting when you've become a serial abandoner. I've abandoned the last 4 books I've started. What is going on with me as a reader is way more powerful than if you don't finish a book, right? And so it doesn't matter if your school is enormous or not. What you're coaching teachers to do is to think really intentionally about how they set up those boundaries in classrooms, right? Because the first grade classroom's different from the 8th grade. And so I would love to shift this conversation a little to one thing we both found amazing in your work, and that is your notes in your notebook about your observations of teachers. Can you talk about that?
Sure. I think that it's really important to come from a place as an administrator where you believe that no matter who you're working with, they probably are coming in with good intentions and trying to do their best. People like to be successful. And if they are not finding success with you, or with whatever their job is, then that's a question that needs to be figured out together in a collaborative way. So I would just say, like, our goal here at CTL is to actually model top to bottom the same kind of assessment procedure. So our teachers set goals for themselves throughout the year, and then we meet together and think about how they can collect evidence and grow in that way, and then have spaces for teachers to self-reflect. Very similar to the process that we do with the students because we think it's research-based.
And I love, you had written some work, an essay for us, for the work that Penny and I were doing. And you shared a sample of your notebook, and where you had record some of the things that you had talked with the teachers about, and then the reflection piece. If you could just talk a little bit about how that supports you, even in your communication with teachers, because I loved your comments there.
Yeah, absolutely. I just feel like one of the things that helps center me is like remembering people's intentions and like all the things that they do that help them be successful. So when I have like a notebook and when people do things that I think are great or that help the school or that help the team or that worked really well for the students, I just try to flip to the pages that I have indexed for them and like write it down. And if I have to have a hard conversation with someone, before I go into the conversation, I just open to their pages and I just read them. And the more often I read them, the more I almost like memorize them. And I think it helps orient me toward their strengths. And it gives me, I come from a position of more of confidence myself, knowing that like I do believe in them and I see the good that they do on our team. So I feel more confident bringing up the areas where I think we could see improvement.
Wow. That's a pretty huge thing you just said, I think. Right? There's the procedural part, okay? My classroom, I always have a conferring notebook, 2 pages for each kid so that I can flip there and glance at it before I start talking. It's the same pattern that you've set up.
Yeah.
But many, many leaders don't have any kind of handwritten. It's all like, I'm typing this because that's faster. But I have a harder time going back and reading all my typed observations of people because I was the coach for 12 years. And that piece wasn't the same as the quick little notes in my notebook. That really helped me like remind myself just what you said of their strengths, of their heart.
Yeah. And that I'm a person that I believe in a strength-based model throughout. You know, I think we need to really focus on the strengths of kids, the strengths of teachers, because the more we do that, the more they replicate that action. And I think that's where the growth comes in. And that's just a belief that I have. So I loved that example that you gave us and what you're modeling for the teachers to do with their kids.
So true.
Yeah, I started it a long time ago in the classroom myself. And so I did it with my students for years, and I found that it helped me a lot. And when I moved here, now I kind of see the whole school as my class, and I do it for teachers. And then I also sometimes do it for parents.
You know what? What you said that I have to jump on and repeat is that idea that when you tell somebody what they're good at, they do it more often. My tennis coach would say, you do this really well. And I kept that because we keep those in our head. We need all that positive.
Exactly.
And I would do it again. And that's the thing when we focus on strengths, it's so powerful. So there are so many moves you've talked about making as a leader, but I have to say, in the environment of your school, you cannot miss that every classroom is filled with books. Space is filled with books, and the teachers are readers. Everyone's reading, right? That is one of the values that you just feel when you're in the school. And so it feels so just particularly important that we ask you how we close all of our podcasts with, what are you currently reading?
Well, I just finished the book Stoner by John Williams. And so that's a mid-century book. And it's like I thought it was a really beautiful book. It was really interesting, almost like a very unemotional narrative that creates intense feelings in the reader about like this ordinary everyman, and then like in what ways is that heroic? That's just a book that I just finished, but I would be remiss. Oh, gotta write it down. I have to give a plug to a Maine author. Probably the best book I've read in the last couple of years is Night of the Living Res by Morgan Talty. And if you're someone who's interested in Native American literature, I would say his contribution to contemporary literature about the Native American experience is really profound.
When can I come and visit? Penny's been able to come, and I've been sort of on the outskirts here.
Elaine, you're invited. We are lucky. A lot of schools do a lot of things really well. And I wish for every school that they had a system to welcome other teachers and show them what they do well. CTL is a school that runs we call it an internship program that welcomes both experienced teachers and pre-service teachers to our school for 1 week at a time. And so I can let you come, Elaine, anytime, but any teachers who'd like to see this in action can go on our website and learn about our program to welcome teachers here and help them learn about moves that they might want to take back to their schools. We keep the school small on purpose in order to make it a laboratory for thinking about different ways that we can help kids become their best selves.
Beautiful. It is all
and it's
true.
good to leave right on that note. Katy, thank you so very much. It was such a privilege and a pleasure to talk to you.
Well, it was absolutely wonderful to be here with you today. Thank you very much for having me on.